This video will show you how to replace the front CV axle assembly on a Toyota Matrix. This will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Now to do this, we're going to have to safely raise and support the front end of the vehicle so we can remove our front wheel. To remove the wheel, remove all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. Now that we have the wheel off, we're focusing directly in the center. We can see our brake rotor. In the center of this area, we have our axle nut. Now we have to use a 12.30mm socket to remove this. If you're using an air tool, typically it will come off fairly easily. If you're using a hand tool, you're going to either have to step on the brake and try to turn this counterclockwise, or carefully use a pry bar down towards the ground, preventing this from turning. Now directly in the center of the axle shaft, we have to lightly tap the axle free from our bearing hub. You can use some penetrant, of course. Now once you do see some movement from this area, we can continue on. We're going to be focusing on removing our brake caliper and bracket from this area. Prior to removing the brake caliper, let's push back our brake caliper piston. This can simply be done using a pry bar. We're going to go in the slot of our brake caliper. I'm trying to press up against the outer portion of my pad, and I'll gently start prying. We're going to pull the caliper outward. Make sure we have some movement here. There we are. Now that we have some movement, we're along the back side of our caliper here. We can see our 2 caliper bracket bolts. You do not need to remove your caliper slider bolts for this job. To remove our caliper bracket bolts, we'll be using an 18mm. I'm going to fully remove the first bolt and then start it back in a couple threads here. Now we'll make sure we hold on to the brake caliper and brake rotor as we continue the removal process of our brake caliper. Once you have the caliper out of place, just give the brake pads a quick inspection. We want to confirm they're not worn at an odd angle or damaged in any way. These look fine, so I'm going to hang them aside, putting no pressure on our flex hose. Now we can remove our brake rotor. Continuing on, we're going to carefully start dislodging our knuckle from our front strut. Now in this area, you can see that we have 2 22mm mounting nuts, and on the rearward side, we have 22mm bolts that make their way straight through towards those nuts. Let's go ahead and hold the bolt head still while we remove our mounting nut from each. Now I'm just going to leave this on here a couple threads while we continue on to the next piece of hardware. Now as we continue on, pulling this down and away from the strut, we need to make sure that our axle is pulling out and away from the back side of our wheel bearing and hub assembly. We can see the very end of the axle right here. Now once you do have that dislodged, we're going to follow the axle deep inside towards the transmission next. Now continuing on, I'm going to be using a long pry bar. I'm going to come underneath the vehicle, and I want to try to get up against the very end of the axle, closest to the transmission. I'm going to start prying up against my transmission, being aware and not causing any damage. We also have a collection receptacle under this area in case any fluid comes out. Now, as you can see, we did separate it from the transmission. Now we're out inside the wheel well again, and we can carefully remove this from the area. Go ahead and flex your shield as necessary. It's just plastic. And there it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new part, let's make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. For this, we're focusing deep inside this area at the transmission. This is where we can see our axle seal. I'm going to use a clean rag without any detergents. We don't want anything making its way into the transmission. We need to make sure the seal is still in good usable order. Assuming it is, let's prepare for installation. Now it's time to install our brand new axle. Down at the very end, you can see that I installed my axle nut, but I installed it backwards. That's due to the fact we're going to have to use a rubber mallet to tap on this end. Now with that said, let's take the inboard side. We're going to carefully slide this down towards the transmission, and you're going to find it only goes in so far. Flex our shield, making our way in. Now, as I attempt to press on this, it did actually slide into place. Now, that's uncommon. If for some reason it did not slide into place, lightly tap on that axle nut area with a rubber mallet, being aware and careful not to cause any damage. Rubber mallet here. Now let's make sure the axle is seated. Reach all the way in towards the transmission here. I'm attempting to pull it out. It should not slide out of place. Let's get this axle nut off of here. We're going to use some anti-seize on the splined area, not necessarily the threaded portion of the end of the axle. We'll gently flex things as necessary. We're watching in the center here. We should see the axle push through. And now we can focus up along the top where the knuckle connects to your front strut. Let's get this in place. I have my upper hardware ready. Nut on there. Once you have them both started in, go ahead and snug them up and then torque them to 162 foot-pounds. Prior to installing the brake rotor, let's apply some anti-seize to the mating surface. You don't need very much here. Just make your way around. Now we can install our brake rotor. Prior to installing this, just have a quick look along the back, along the center area. We need to make sure the mating surface is clean. Let's go ahead and get this in place. Once you do have it in place, we'll continue on with one of our lug nuts holding this in place, and then we'll continue with that caliper. I like to use an axle nut as a spacer. As for the caliper, we're going to carefully take it so we can slide the brake pads over our brake rotor. Once you feel as though you have that in place, it's time for our two caliper bracket mounting bolts. Start them in, snug them up, and torque them to 79 foot-pounds. Okay, we've got our bolts here. I like to use some blue thread locker on these. Now we can remove our lug nut and our spacer. and we'll continue on with our axle nut. As far as the axle nut, you want to make sure that you put this in position, start it on by hand, and snug it with a hand tool, never with an impact tool, which could cause damage. Once we do have it snug, we're going to have to torque this to 159 foot-pounds. Now to torque this, we have the vehicle closer to the ground. We're going to be using a long pry bar diagonally across our lug studs. We want to make sure we have this as flat as possible so we do not cause any damage. That's going to prevent this from turning. Now once you do have it torqued, we need to make sure we lock this down so it cannot loosen up while we drive down the road. Looking at the axle shaft itself, you can see that we have a slot. We're going to use a hammer and punch and carefully drive our axle nut down into this area. Now, as you can tell, I do have that peened into the proper position here. Double check to make sure yours is properly secured, and we'll continue on with installing our wheel next. Now, one last quick inspection in this area, and we can reinstall our wheel. Now once you have your wheel in place, continue on to all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. We're going to bottom them out. Get the wheel safely back down on the ground and we'll be torquing each of them to 76 foot-pounds. I've got the wheel back on the ground and now I'm going to torque these to 76 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing you need to do is take your vehicle for a road test, listen for any odd noises, and get yourself a 4-wheel alignment. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.